Hello, everyone. I am back from my meditation retreat, all nice and refreshed and happy. And while I was away, I understand that Sam had quite a viral video talking about his GTFO, get the F out of America story, being personal and vulnerable and sharing things from his perspective. And if you've been watching for a while, you've probably heard the basics, but I thought it would be useful for me to share vulnerably and candidly from my perspective why I thought it was the right time to leave America and create a new life here in Albania. So thank you for joining me for that. But before I get started on my journey, just a quick ask of you to hit that subscribe button and follow along for more content just like this. This isn't just my story about leaving America. This is my story about what happens when you kind of leave yourself. I'm going to start a little earlier in the process than Sam did. I was an advanced kid, so I graduated high school 2 years early when I was 16. I was a 17-year-old freshman at the University of Missouri, and I started having some really severe health problems. I started getting bruises all over the place, these weird little red dots popping up on my legs, and if I wore a backpack on my back, and nobody really kind of knew what was wrong. After going to a lot of specialists, I learned that I had a condition called aplastic anemia, a very severe bone marrow failure, where my bone marrow basically just stopped producing the platelets and white blood cells that your blood needs in order to prevent infection and to clot. And that led to a really challenging period in my life for 2013 and 2014, where I was very physically ill, in and out of the hospital. I was an inpatient a lot. I had to drop out of college. It was the beginning of social media, so I was still watching all of my friends experience their, penultimate years in college while I was myself concerned with how to get on Social Security disability and what Medicaid would cover and how to get my health insurance to cover specialty treatments or travel across the country instead of what frat parties to go to or what courses to study with. And that also led to me having a pretty significant mental illness. I really broke down. I think in hindsight, it was just a loss of hope for the kind of aspirational professional consultant, fast track path that at least little Spencer always imagined for his professional career. And my favorite movie growing up, I had a couple, but one of my favorites was Up in the Air with George Clooney, where he is a consultant that travels around the US laying people off. Of course, this was a recession era movie. And then Anna Kendrick comes in with her laptop and is like, we could do this cheaper remotely. I had these dreams of being a high octane consultant with my Amex Platinum card and my airport club access, my power suits and my IBM ThinkPad. It was a really sad and hard experience of watching my life get smaller, of watching opportunities diminish, and of really doubting my path and my power to make things happen, and to just realize that it was not going to be the straight and narrow path to the top that I had always imagined for myself. I watched my life get smaller while my ambitions stayed large, and I think that led me to make a lot of really bad decisions that caused a lot of people, a lot of family members of mine, a lot of grief. It was a horrible experience. And I think that's kind of what I've come to realize. When I tell the story, I tend to tell it as a hero's journey of like, I got sick, then I got better, and now I'm doing great. But in reality, it was a really sad and hard experience. And it was really challenging to let that go and to realize that I was going to end up having to make my own path. As I got sicker and as family members were less and less able to support me, I got on Social Security disability, which provided me with some level of income, but not enough. Sam and I were close. We'd known each other, and I actually moved up to his family farm and stayed there and was able to get better, to be cured, and to experience, I think, for the first time, a family unit with unconditional love and support that really allowed me to recover that sense of self. But still, I didn't know what my path was. I didn't finish college. I didn't go back. My body healed faster than my dreams did. And I knew that my 20s were going to be an interesting experience of not really knowing what the path held. When Sam's father passed away, Sam, his mom Thelma, and I moved to Kansas City. We had this wonderful penthouse up in the sky in Kansas City. It was absolutely gorgeous. And it was a time for me to try on different lives. I got to work in marketing at a distillery, which was really cool. I got to experienced cocktail life, which was great. I got really involved with lots of organizations and networking events. I was able to work on a couple political campaigns. I helped someone get elected for mayor. But I had a therapist at the time who I only had a few sessions with, but really stuck with me. And I was talking with him about how much I really enjoyed all the professional networking that I did, how much I liked the business community, how big of a part of identity this was. And he paused me and he was like, Spencer, but that's not you. You know, the people that you're hanging out with, they are lawyers, they are consultants, they are executives. You know, you are essentially cosplaying in this community. You need to find out what your identity is and what you really want to do, what your vocation is, what your passion is. And boy, that hit me like a train. I saw him for one more session, but I just couldn't get over that. Not because it was bad advice, but it really hit me hard to realize that I had just essentially been cosplaying or pretending to be a professional executive when I didn't really have a plan. So, 2018, Sam's mom passes away. I still describe that experience as the most meaningful experience of my life. Sam's mother, Thelma, was my best friend. We spent all day together for years. When I was sick, when her husband, Bob, was sick, and then when she was sick, we spent all of our time together, and it was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life, was the opportunity to care for her, especially as she was getting older and then eventually passed. After she passed, Sam and I left the apartment and bought a house. And I was still reeling in grief. I know Sam and I were both reeling from grief. I got a job selling luxury pens, so fountain pens, Mont Blancs. I can show you some of my favorites if you'd like. I particularly like the ones they either click or twist open, so you don't expect them to be a fountain pen, but they are. Helping them in the long term build up an online version of their brick and mortar business. But that was a really isolating, low-paying retail job. Then COVID happened. I remember we had started hearing brief news about the COVID pandemic. The pen store was in the mall section of a convention center hotel, the Westin in Kansas City, Crown Center. And I knew it wasn't going to be around for a while. So like everyone else, on March 13th, 2020, everything closed. And I realized during that lockdown period that I needed to find a professional career, professional stability, more like what I had dreamed of when I was younger. Something I could do remotely, something where I was providing value through my judgment and my communication skills, and not just through my time and labor and retailing. So I re-enrolled at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and also started working with friends of mine, talking about either starting a business or starting some consulting or working on some consulting projects, and quickly got hired, a lot more quickly than I expected, and definitely way more quickly than I could finish my studies, to work on some large corporate software implementation projects. The types of projects and the types of consulting, again, that I had really dreamed of as a kid. Except the dream wasn't there. I realized that it was actually just drudgery. It was hearing the Teams ringtone and feeling this level of panic in my body that I was going to somehow get in trouble, like I was being called down to the principal's office. I had the notifications enabled on my Apple Watch, and so I realized that I developed like a trauma response to the little vibration on my Apple Watch. So I was like, oh man, who's messaging me now? It really was incredible. And everything that my late teens, early 20s self had wanted to experience some success in corporate enterprise consulting, except for the realization that it hurt my soul and I didn't like it, that it was draining, that it was not really what I wanted. And so my role finished with that project. I was able to roll off that project. And then I found a new role, but in person, because of course I had convinced myself that your problem, Spencer, is that you're a social person and you've been working remotely during this pandemic. Maybe if you find a hybrid or in-person role where you can utilize the similar skill sets, you'll be happy. So I was at a career fair at the university. I found a great local company that sold and implemented accounting software, and I was able to get a job there and start working with a wonderful team in Kansas City. It was my first time working in an office, working in a cubicle, and I appreciated the amount of creative freedom that I had to say, hey, maybe cold calling to sell people the backbone of their enterprise systems is not the way to go to sell people this $100,000, $200,000 mission critical software. Maybe we can try this campaign on LinkedIn, or maybe we can try to get involved with these specific trade groups or develop relationships with private equity firms like the one that just bought our consulting firm and see if they can refer us to their different clients. The wind is really getting me here. As you can see, it's very beautiful here in Toronto today, but as the seasons are changing, the weather is a little bit less predictable. The pandemic hit and I realized that I needed some stability in my own life. I needed insurance. I needed legitimacy. I thought that I was really getting that with my corporate careers. Then a mentor of mine gave me some really good advice. Look at the people who are successful in your industry. Look at your boss's boss. Look at LinkedIn. Look at the people who are doing really well and getting promoted. And don't just look at them from a professional lens. Look at their personal lives. Is that the type of life that you want to be living? Is that a type of life that would make you happy? And I thought about it. I loved my boss. I loved my coworkers. But it was not going to make me happy to have a slightly larger house in a slightly more secluded subdivision in Kansas City or in Johnson County in Missouri. It was not going to make me happy to have my life revolve around youth sports and getting the kids to school and, continuing to try and put money in my 401k so eventually maybe someday I could afford to go travel the world. And similarly, it was not going to make me happy to continue on the path that I was on of continuous renovations of our luxurious stone cottage in Kansas City, of driving 30 minutes each way to the office, of, dreading going back to work some days to the point where I would just go and get one of those fishbowl-sized margaritas from Applebee's and hopefully hide in the back near the bar so I could drink it before going back to my cubicle so I could continue to maintain a sunny, positive disposition. I got everything that I thought that I wanted. I had a good title, I had good benefits, I had good coworkers, I had stability, but there was still a hole in my life. I felt like there was a hole in my love cup, a hole in my life satisfaction cup that I didn't really know how to patch. So I did what any good consultant did. I was feeling unsatisfied, and so I did a time use survey. I have a really cool device called a Timular that I use for time tracking when I had multiple clients and different tickets to bill to. I reconfigured it so that I could use it to track how I was spending my time in my days to see if there was what was going on and if there was opportunity there for me to maybe make some changes. And what I learned was that I was spending 70% of my life either consuming media or creating media, writing emails, writing Teams messages, watching TV while watching TikTok, playing video games, laying in the hammock outside, listening to music. And the time that I was spending with people that really mattered to me, that I was socializing with, that time was primarily spent drinking alcohol. It was imbibing to the max, and drinking is going out to bars, maybe going to networking events that felt like fancier drinking, but there wasn't nearly the level of time well spent. It made me realize that I was spending my time on autopilot. I wasn't spending my time with intention on things that were actually going to make my life better in the short term or in the long term. I also realized that as much as I loved the experience of renovating and building our house, moving from the center of downtown Kansas City, where we lived in an apartment surrounded by neighbors, to even a nice neighborhood in the middle of the city was very isolating. I had to get in the car to go see anyone. I had to get in the car to go to any restaurant or get any sort of food or do any sort of activity except for maybe walk the same nature trails that I had walked every single morning and every single evening with the dog for 5 years. I just felt really dissatisfied with life. And I felt a lot of shame, especially because of the amount of work that Sam in particular, but Sam and I had put in to building what we believed and thought was an ideal version of our lives that was actually, I think, making us sick and making us kind of miserable. We renovated every single inch of our house in Kansas City, but no renovation could really fix the way that I felt inside of it, which was lonely and afraid. The future was going to be more of the present. I think another thing I want to talk about this, 2019 to 2024 arc, or I guess trough sadness that I keep kind of complaining about, and we'll see how much of this makes it to the end of the video, was my health and my weight. I think there were a lot of us that experienced the lockdowns in 2020 and the COVID era as like, well, I get a stimulus check. I've been told I need to stay inside. liquor stores are essential businesses, so, let me get that six-pack and start drinking seltzers at noon and not stop until bedtime. And I realized that my health had really, really suffered during this period. I gained a bunch of weight. I didn't look like myself. I didn't feel like myself. From my experience being very sick, I got very familiar with the psychiatric, medical model healthcare system. And I actually had I describe it as like a Keurig for pills. It was called a hero machine that would ding every time it was like, time for you to take another Klonopin, time for your Ambien. And I started looking forward to dinner and then Ambien as my reward for a day completed. I was just really not in a happy state. And I remember when Sam and I started talking about moving and discussing the idea of selling our house and leaving abroad, we took a scouting trip. And I know that we've talked about this on here before. And actually, with Smile Abroad, we get a lot of questions. Why not Portugal? What was your experience like in Portugal? Why not Malta? What was your experience like in Malta? Why not Spain? What was your experience like in Spain? And I've wanted to find videos and photos during that time, but the reality is I didn't take any because I didn't like the way I looked. I felt really challenged by being 70 pounds heavier than I am now. And so once we finally got to the stage of getting back from our scouting trip, back to the house is mostly completed, I was just ready. I was ready to go. I was really, really motivated to make a change. And then the shooting happened. I know that Sam's talked quite a bit about it, but essentially, while I was away, I was on a road trip from Fort Lauderdale to Kansas City to buy a Mercedes, of course. It wouldn't be a Sam and Spencer story if there wasn't a Mercedes mentioned. I had picked up the car in Florida and was driving when I got a text from Sam. There's been a shooting. I'm on the ground at the Cheesecake Factory. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. It wasn't my first experience with gun violence. It definitely wasn't my first experience hearing a round of shots go off or even witnessing the crowds and the lockdowns. But, it was enough. It was enough. We'd spent so much time and effort and energy trying to change the situation, the street that we lived on. It was a relatively busy roadway, but the speed limit was still 30 miles an hour. But police at all hours of the day, it was the police and fire, would race down it at 60 or 70 miles an hour, sirens blaring to get from one end of town to the other. I loved being a member of our HOA. I was a pretty active member of our Rock Hill Homeowners Association. We had the police chief come as a guest to our annual meeting. So I asked her, you as the police are creating a hazard in our neighborhood. There's no way that you can safely go 70 miles an hour with the sirens on at 2 a.m. or at 5 p.m. down this road. Why are you doing that? Can you stop? And her response to me was basically like, that's protocol. That's how it works. Nothing I can do. We worked with the city. We saw so many accidents. We saw so many people on the sidewalks getting hit. We watched cars flip over onto our neighbors' brick walls that were in front of their houses. So Sam and I spent about a year working really hard to find funding and work with the city to have a road diet put up to bring the road down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes. That still wasn't going to solve, I think, the discontent or the frustration that I was feeling in our lives. And so I came to the realization around the same time with Sam that, maybe it was not on us and I couldn't fix the system or the situation. Maybe it was time to try something new. So we decided to let go. Sam and I say, we went from decision to being on the ground here in 60 days. In reality, it was like 10 days shorter than that, but there'd been some planning work ahead of time. But I found that to be one of the most freeing and liberating processes of my entire life. And it's funny, as I talk about this, the sun is starting to come out and shine again. And that's exactly what it felt like. I really like to make music using AI. I like this platform called Suno. So I made a whole album of songs about, what life could be like in Albania. There was one I just loved called Packing Up for Paradise.
Packing up for paradise, ready for a new sunrise. Empty rooms and open skies, saying all our goodbyes. Goodbye to the old, hello to the new. Our European dream is coming true. Packing up for paradise, ready for a new sunrise. From Albania the adventure's just begun. Greece and Montenegro, we dance till the morning glow. Croatia to Mallorca.
It really allowed me to envision the process of letting go, specifically with the intention of building a new life in Europe, a new life that was free of a lot of the things that were bringing me down, a life that was full of opportunity. And, even though of course there's going to be challenge, of course there's going to be struggle, of course there's going to be worry and anxiety and stress in anything. But it was really cool to be excited about something again, and really cool to take that leap into the unknown and into the new. I loved the estate sale process, which you can learn more about in our estate sale video, of tagging every single item, of being able to say goodbye to every single item, to apologize to the woman who bought my very beloved and marked up copy of Brené Brown's Daring Greatly for hey, I penciled this book a lot, but it means a lot to me. I hope it means a lot to you, and the way that she was able to receive that message. Letting go felt holy. Every single item was one less reason to stay. And you don't realize how heavy the physical things in your life are and how much they are holding you back. In hindsight, we probably didn't need to cut as aggressively as we did, but it was good to be able to tell ourselves we're leaving with suitcases and we'll figure it out as we go. And that's kind of what we did. So we made our journey, we made our trip. We had our flights to Albania, we had our cat, we had our suitcases, and we arrived here. And I knew as soon as we arrived that it really felt like a place, it really felt like home. It felt incredible to be here. We explored the country and decided to live here in beautiful Saranda. I mean, what's not to love? I get to wake up and look at this every single day. The body remembers kind of what the mind forgets. And I think that it has been fascinating to experience my body feeling at ease and my mind feeling more at ease as I have settled in here more. I think one thing that I want to mention in this video is I experienced, definitely more than Sam, I experienced quite a bit of grief, especially after we got settled in here in Saranda. I spent like the first month or so sleeping. I was sleeping for 9 or 10 hours a night, not because I was stressed, not because I was sad, not because I was worried. As I processed through it, I realized what I was feeling and experiencing was grief for the smallness of my former life. I was experiencing grief for all of the time that I had spent with my mind and emotions ruled by cable news or by, sirens or by work worries. That's not to say I don't worry about what's going on in the news or making money, but it's not all that life needs to be about. Life can be about so much more. There's so much more out here, and you owe it to yourself to experience it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. One of our good friends that we met here while traveling, she moved to Europe for a year. She stayed in Italy for 3 months. She stayed in Albania for 9 months, and then decided, hey, I've had a wonderful European adventure, but I would really like to move to Arizona to be closer to my grandchildren. If you realize it's not for you, it's not for you. But there's no need to stay stuck and stay unhappy. Things are tenuous. Things are tenuous in the US. It feels like, at least I'm not there right now. I talk to my mom, I talk to my friends, and I talk to all of you who reach out and book consultations. Things really feel like a tinderbox right now. And you owe it to yourself to build and design a life that makes you feel good and whole. And at least for me, the process of letting go and moving to Albania has allowed me to accomplish that. Moving to Albania and moving abroad, and specifically the process of letting go of my preconceived notions about life, what I want to do when I grow up, has been challenging. Look, I still love tech. I still love business. I still listen to Marketplace with Kai Rizdal every day. I still sometimes wonder if a corporate career might be up my alley, and I wonder, are my previous colleagues doing okay? And I wonder what life would be like if I was still, doing the Microsoft Outlook Teams grind. But I've learned to measure success differently. I've learned to measure success not in dollars earned, although that is important, and not in shareholder value achieved. I've learned to measure success in the amount of people that I'm able to help and the amount of love that I'm able to put out and receive into the world. And that has been a change that I hope I can continue to carry with me as I enter this next stage of my life. And there are some things I really miss about being in the US. I really like and miss business culture. I miss networking events. I really miss my friends at the LGBT Chamber of Commerce in Kansas City. I miss pitch competitions, miss entrepreneurial adventures. But I will say, here in this place, in this world, in this life right now, the stillness and the calm and the ability to really be myself has given me the opportunity to build something wonderful with Smile Abroad, to help people like you on their journey and to change lives. I've done great consulting projects, but I've never had someone tell me. I had the other night at one of our expat events, hey, I saw your videos on YouTube and it seemed convincing, so I decided to move here for a couple months and check it out. I honestly didn't realize I had that power or influence or effect on people. And so that has been incredible to realize and has really made my soul much happier than when we were going for shareholder value. So that's my story. Now here in Saranda, absolutely loving it. If you're watching this because you're tired, you're stressed, you're frustrated, you want out, good. That fear and that frustration means that you are still alive and that there is a voice in you telling you you can do something about it. I'll conclude with this. Leaving America wasn't about running away from anything. It was about choosing to live a new life and running towards that with a whole heart and a lot of excitement. If you're ready to make that leap, if you're ready to make a change, reach out to us. We're happy to help in any way that we can, whether that's provide inspiration, support on your legal journey, anything else that we can to help you achieve the life of your dreams. You can visit our website, smileabroad.al. You can leave a comment here. You can book consults with Sam or myself, or you can join our Smile Abroad Club and access a group of lots of other like-minded folks who are on the same path as you for some accountability and one-on-one assistance. Look, you don't have to be rich, retired, or reckless to move abroad. You just need to be ready. We did it in 60 days, and you can do it too. If there was ever a time to get the F out of the US, it's right now. If you're serious about it, reach out to us. We're happy to help you in any way that we can. Thanks so much. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and hope to see you in Albania sometime soon.